because we can do that. Okay, I'm just going to read his short bio. I'm a little bit biased with this guest, so please treat him well. So when I'm done introducing him, please give him a round of applause, like give him some reactions there. Tonight, we are very privileged. We are honored to have Mthokozisi Bhengu. I call him Mthokozi. He's a dynamic C-suite executive with 27 years of experience across funeral services, financial, and legal industries. Currently, as a group managing executive at Icebolethu Group, he oversees strategic, financial, and developmental decision while driving organizational transformation. With an MBA and a Bachelor of Law degree and a certification in corporate governance, Mthokozisi has held key leadership roles at companies like Old Mutual, Standard Trust, where he excelled in sales, innovations, and growth strategies. His career reflects a strong commitment to operational excellence and business growth. Let's welcome Mthokozisi tonight. Please don't receive him as an executive. Please receive him as a brother, a friend, someone we can actually just lean in based on his experience and his friendliness. So welcome, Mthokozi. Please unmute your video and mic, and over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mabongi. Not sure to say this Mabongi or just say Mabongi, but thank you. Is my pardon?
I prefer Mabongi actually. It takes away the pressure. Once you say Sisi, I know there is a certain way I need to behave.
Okay. No, thank you very much.
Mabongi.
Am I audible? Can you guys see me?
Good. You are
Okay,
good.
thank
We
you.
can see you, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. It's actually exciting and privileged to be here. Thank you very much, Mabongi, for that introduction. As Mabongi has said, my name is Mthokozisi Bhengu. I'm originally from Potchefstroom, South Coast. It's where I was born and bred. But actually, because of work, I'm all over the show. Okay, all right, okay. Yes. So I think today, when Mrs. Mabongi, I've referred to as Sisi because that's what I've always referred to ever since I've known her. So when Mabongi asked me to come in, I think she mentioned a lot of things. So today we're going to cover business growth, business sustainability, and a little bit of customer research and insights around it. I'm not sure how does it work. Do I walk through presentation, then take questions at the end, or it become interactive? How do you normally prefer it? How does it normally work?
We're going to allow you to make your presentation, and then right at the end, people can, while you're presenting, just make note of their questions on the chat, and then we can go through them at the end. The last 10 minutes, then we can take questions.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So please feel free to just flow until, I'm not sure if you prefer that I give you a heads up towards maybe 5 minutes of your time, and then we can then take questions after that.
Okay, cool. I'm comfortable. No, thank you. So as Mabongi had said, I've worked across legal services, financial services, and now I'm between federal and financial services. I'm a strong student of leadership. I'm a strong student of business sustainability, and there's a story to that. And I think probably it's why my angle is from that point of view. So I'll speak of my experience, what I've observed, generally in certain industries where I've worked, but also generally across what's happening in the business world. I think Mabongi, since you're driving for me, can you just go to the next slide? You are driving for me, right? Thank you. So this is one of my favorite quotes, which I'm just as a way of introduction, just when I refer to it, that it's all about unlearning and relearning. I think that's a stage we're in. So obviously these days you can learn everywhere. I mean, if you talk about TikTok and school, there's just learning everywhere. But the most important part is that ability to unlearn and relearn in order to become a little bit more competitive, a little bit more illiterate in this world and age we're in. So I think today is part of that. So I'm not saying everything I'm going to say is rocket science, but obviously it's just part of my views around it, and we can debate more about it. I think the next slide. So I think we talk about businesses here. So I present to you guys that there are different kind of entrepreneurs. You definitely have self-employed people. Those are individuals who are either survival or thriving. So someone who selling pap and flakes, or someone who's running a hair salon or hair nail bar. They are employing themselves, or someone who's a lawyer. Those people are self-employed. They're individuals. They can be making a lot of money, or they are just surviving they're just surviving around it. Then you've got people who are entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs, the self-employed are mostly people who are using their skill in order to make money. They are not employed by someone else. They are professional, or their skills. I mean, someone like a graphic designer is self-employed because they are freelancing. Then you've got people who are entrepreneurs. Those are people who are not necessarily using their skill, but they are looking at the opportunity within an industry, looking what the gap is, and then they set up a business. Those are entrepreneurs, and they are individuals. Self-employed can be entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs can be self-employed, but those are just distinct characters around it, and we're going to talk more around it. Then you've got people who are just serial entrepreneurs. These are people who are they just wanna, if you talk about them being employed or talk about them working for someone else, they'll move from one business to another. One day they work they're owning a bakery, another day they're owning a saloon, and the other day they're owning a funeral home. So it visas. Those are people who are students, entrepreneurs. They build something, they sell it, and they start again. Then you've got institutions. In another world, you can see big organizations, big corporate as institutions, but you can also look at family businesses. You've got businesses. I'm sure one that comes to mind at the moment is a business like Tata Group. Tata Group is a family-owned business that is cuts across industry. That one is I know the founder just passed away now. In South Africa, if you look at Bidvest is branch off as is an entrepreneur who runs multiple businesses across multiple industries, but he runs them as institutions. He buys and sells and builds. And so it's very important to note that the institutions don't have to be big corporate. It can also be a family business. It can also be an individual who got multiple investments and multiple businesses and multiple industries. But the only thing he does is that he invests into businesses, and he for whatever returns he wants, unless he wants, but he goes in as an institution, and we're going to talk about more about that. I think if we can go to the next slide and link to this one here, then so just the previous one. I'm going to give it fast for me. I think the previous slide. Thank you. This one it's quite an old research, so the numbers there might be slightly a little bit old. So what you are looking at there, you've got different kind of how people get into entrepreneurship. So you've got people who are struggling go-getters. So these are people who are, again, they're survivalists. They are looking to survive. They employ themselves. They hardly have more than one employees in their space, and it's 43% of them. Though they are motivated to grow, but they don't have the skills to grow. I think that's one about it. Then the other one are just survivalists. These are people who are just living from hand to mouth. They're just keeping the lights open on, and they can't grow beyond where they are. Because of their survivalist mentality. It doesn't mean that industries they're in a survivalist industry. It's just themselves, their makeup and the way they think, and they don't think big, they don't innovate, and they don't also learn or relearn and things like that. And I think the research at the time it was done, which was about, I think it was about 2015, it said about 33% of those people in that market. Then you've got reluctant entrepreneurs. These are people by circumstances have become entrepreneurs, other people who are retrenched. and then they ended up starting their own business, or because they're pushed by their families to that business space, or whatever the reason is. But these people have the ability to grow, they're in the right industries, but they just don't see beyond what they can. They can't unlock what more they can do in for them to grow. And I think there's about 8% of those, in according to these numbers here. And you've got those driven achievers. And I'm sure in this room here, you've got quite a high number of driven achievers. These are people who are motivated, they've got the skill, and they just want to go and get it. And those people, they don't sleep at night. Those people, doesn't matter how it is, they just rise up again and do it. And it's good 16%. So it's very important for every entrepreneur to see, how did I get into this space? And then where am I? And obviously you move around from one quadrant to another, depending and what the person wants to achieve. And there's nothing wrong to be in any quadrant as long as it feeds you, but you also don't want to limit yourself to be a quadrant where you can move to a next one. I think the next slide, Mbongi. So here it's just different steps of every business. I think at the moment this is basic stuff. So I'm going a little bit too fast. If you can just in one slide back, thank you. So yeah, from every business, it's an idea, it's a concept. Then obviously you test the idea, you open one branch, you open one site, or you have one client, and you can see you actually can make money out of this thing. Then it's in that space, you use your own money, you use your own pension, or you borrow money from friends, or from at that time you hardly get any finance or any funding from anyone. It becomes your, what you call your angel investors. It's a proof of concept, and people are supporting you because they like you. And not necessarily this time because what you are doing is actually growing as right. And once you've done that, then you move into a startup early stage. I think that's when you're now starting, you're a serious business. You've got a market, you've got a model that you are using, and you've got a product that you are putting it out there, and you are starting to compete. Then obviously you can you're starting up, you're already early stage of starting up. So the time a person spends on each level differs from their attitude and differs from what they are prepared to do as well. And then, but you need to get to a point. Every business, if not every business, every entrepreneur moves from being a startup to an accelerated development or scaling up. But that is where most businesses actually die, because after proof of concept and after you've owned the market, the problem is you accelerate too early, you die. And I'm sure I don't know exactly what's going on, but there's a big debate that one of the reasons that DRIP is in liquidation at the moment is because it's accelerated too early. I was not close enough. I don't have a comment on that. I don't have a view on that. But it's growth too early can kill a business. Scaling up too early can kill a business. But you can't stay the whole period of your business life, practically for 20 years or whatever, as an early startup, because you're not realizing the potential. People come and beat you. So that accelerating development stage is very important. And thereafter, you move to growth institutionalization. And because once you've accelerated, you've scaled up, you've got multiple branches, or you've got multiple sites, you've got multiple employees, and your income is steady and it's whatever, your brand is out there. The question is, what's next? Do you institutionalize this thing? And that's when it becomes a bit tricky for most entrepreneurs. You separate yourself from the business. You're no longer the business, but the business is itself and you are yourself. Because then you need to say, what to say, you can still be the brand, but there's a difference between you and the brand. And you are still running the business, but there's a difference between what you do and what the business do, because the business got its own life cycle. So it's always important to say, where are you and what do you do next? Because how do you manage your business and how you manage yourself and how you associate with everybody else around you, which is your customers, as well as your funders and everybody else, is very much linked to where you are in that stage. So it's always very important to review that, because every business in that stage. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's a listed business or whether just a listed business or it's a one-person business. Every business goes through this stage around that. The next slide. Thank you. Then it's a question of what are the worries of each business owner? And I submit to you guys that whether you are a big corporate giant like ABSA or VW or Apple or whoever you are, you worry about this thing. So firstly is about, are you making enough? Are you making enough revenue? Are your costs enough? Are they sufficient? Are you managing your cost? Are you making enough profit? If every year, every month, every week, you worry about that. The level of worry Obviously, it depends on how big or small a business is, but it's one of the things that every business owner needs to look at. Are we making enough money? Our costs, are we know which our costs are, and are we manage our cost well? Are we making enough profits? I think that's one word. And there's second one is surviving the current challenges. There will always be challenges in life. There will always be challenges in business, and it doesn't matter what the challenges are, but you always need to worry about the survival. And one example which just comes to mind I remember when I moved to Joburg in 2008, the company called Century City was selling everything around Waterfall. They were saying there's going to be a hospital here, there's going to be a mall, and they were selling plots. At the time, they were quite cheap, but it was just an open land. Then 2009, there was a financial meltdown, and they stopped developing. But because those are the challenges, they know what they were doing. They stopped, they scaled down a bit, and when everything came right again, and they moved up. So, and now you've got Waterfall the way it is, and for those who are familiar with Joburg. So you're always going to be surrounded by challenges, whether it's political, whether it's war between Israel and now Iran and whoever they are, there's always going to be a challenge, whether it's MK, whether it's petrol, there's going to be challenges, and you need to look into them. The other one is staff. And I mean, you cannot be a business on your own. You're always going to hire people. So the worry is around, are people that I've hired, are they competent? If they are competent or incompetent, are they stealing from me? Are they theft? Are they committing fraud with customers or whatever the case might be? And maybe they're not stealing, maybe they are competent, but are they available? Are they not using, sick leave not to come to work? And if they are at work and available, are they committed to work? Because we pay them for hours, we pay them for time. You find that they are work, they are busy on TikTok, they are not doing certain things. So you need to have systems to manage this thing. And it doesn't matter whether a big corporate or small business, but those are the worries that you're going to have. And again, it's competitors. You're going to have competitors. You need to worry about them. I mean, who's copying you? Who are you copying? What are the introduced to the market that's going to take you out of the market? And then lastly, which is very important and which I think every business worries about is what's the future? So should I step out if I'm a serial entrepreneur, I've established this thing to a next level and I want to move on to a next thing, what's next? Do I step out of it, or do I sell it, or do I give it to my kids? If I give it to my kids, are my kids prepared? And if you are working for a big corporate like JSE listed, so who's the next CEO? And the shareholders are worried about that. So all of those things in a business life cycle, they're critical. So just because you are running one-man business or one-person business doesn't mean these worries affect you more than a business actually JSE is making billions. I think that's a cycle, and you never get out of this worry as long as you're in the business. I think the next slide. Yes. Now, this is what I call sure, these ones can be more. These are the errors that I think, and this is according to Mthokozisi, are made by entrepreneurs. Number one, especially small businesses, they do not write down who they are and where they're going. Especially when people are starting up, they know where they're going, but it's not written down. I know people, they will have a journal for their lives, for their weddings, they've got journal for everything else, but for their businesses, it's not clear because they think it's big, it's business plan, 10 pages, in a simple format. I think we're going to talk about that. It's very important. Be clear in your head if you write down where you're going. Secondly, to study the market where you're going. Whether you're going to open a nail bar or you're going to join a certain salon to sell your services, or you're going to open another shop that's going to compete with ShopRite, to study your market. And I think we're going to have examples to talk about that. And the other one is copy and paste competitors, especially in low barrier entry industries. I mean, you talk about catering. I mean, funeral home is one of them, where there's just anyone can wake up and compete with you. It's very easy to copy and paste. But the problem with copy and paste is that when you are doing that, but you're not improving from what your competitor is doing, you are not adding any value. So you eventually you're gonna lose. So therefore, this thing of copy and paste what other people are doing, but you don't understand exactly what's driving them, and you're not improving, it's not gonna be sustainable. And the other one is counting the cost. If your next door is selling at 10 cents cheaper than you, and you just want to sell it cheaper, but you don't know what their input costs are. And so you need to follow your money, track your money, your costs in a way that says, if you are running a promotion, what does it look like? If you're not running a promotion, what does it look like? And I think people don't do that. And most important one is, do not build systems. It's easy, and when you start a business, that you are the system, but it needs to get to a point where the system is a system. Whether you're in the room or not, the system works. I always make this example. I've got this GP in Joburg that I've been using. I think with time, I think my family uses them now. That lady, she's hardly in the practice, but it's always been there. It's always been running every time I've known it. So she's a professional who runs a business, whether she's there or not, it runs. So because she's built a system. So that's very important that you build your system from day one, and you don't have to be perfect. You just improve around it. I think it's very important to build a system for your industry, for your business, for it to work. Other one, do not hire well. It's easy when you are starting that you hire the next available person. You hire your cheap labor or your people that are easy to hire, your cousins and all of that. If you do that, it's going to catch up with you later. It's not a wrong thing to do because what you're hiring, what you can afford, but always be clear that you're not hiring well at a time. Should you hire well or not well? Sometimes people don't train people. If I look at the industry, retail industry, we should look at your ShopRites, your spas, and you look at your garages, your engines, and sometimes to an extent your hospitality industry. This is my assessment again. The skills level, or maybe the IQ, okay, it's wrong. I'm going to politically incorrect. Let me not say it. But if you find those people that work in that industry are not most sophisticated, not most educated. But those industries, what they do well, they train their people and they hold them accountable. And we find that in our small businesses, because we think ourselves small, we don't hire well because we can't afford, but at the same time, we don't train our people, we don't hold them accountable. Those 3 blocks, if you fail on each and every one of them, your staff are going to be a liability, and you're going to think it's an market or it's you, but no. Hire well, train well, hold them accountable, and because your people are resources. And the other one, which is about pertaining to you now, not building to the systems, you do not evolve, you do not learn. You do not have a mentor or coach. Sometimes you are starting to make money and people are treating you as semi-god. Because you are an entrepreneur who's doing well in your space. You don't have people who speak to you. You don't have people that you look up to. Everywhere you are in the room, you are the one who pay the drinks. I mean, it's mostly ladies here. I'm not sure how ladies show up or if they've made the money and that. I can't. But sometimes you need those people that you're not the best thing in the room. People that actually hold you to account. And it's very important if you're a business person that you just step out from people that actually worship the ground you walk in so they can speak to you as a business person and reimagine your business as well. And I think in that reimagining, always look at diversifying at partnership. We're going to talk about it. One thing in my space, because I work both in corporate and small businesses, one thing that is struggle, especially us as Black people, we struggle to diversify and partner, especially partnering. We want to build towards being enterprise to a point of building it and it till dies just because we don't have a partner. I think that's one of the things that we struggle about. I'm going to make 1 or 2 examples. And you do not think big. We don't do not think because we think it's too much. The problem is if you don't think big, at some point you're going to die. And if you do not die, someone is going to take over, is going to buy you over. Either you, whilst you're alive, or your kids are going to sell your business to the next generation. I think the next slide. Cool. These are just a couple of brands, and I just want a couple of stories based on what, again, this is my observation. So I'm sure most of us know when FNB was the coolest bank, it was the most innovative bank at some point. I'm sure if you look at it now, that has died. I think when FNB was competing with the likes of Standard Bank and Nedbank, I mean, and upside the time, around your early, before 2010, they were big on innovation. They're big in being the first, I can help you kind of vibe. So now that has sort of died, but FNB is there. Capitec is about 22 years old now. I'm sure most of us know when the loan companies that were actually amalgamated to become Capitec. In that process, you find that Capitec has diversified. It's moved from being a loan company to a bank. It's now business banking, and very soon it's now an insurance company. And because it looked at its market, it says, look, they've got big players here, but they're going to look at their niche. They've been banking with people. Yes, people like Capitec are queuing, the queues are long, but they're surviving and thriving, and it continues to thrive. Then we've got African Bank, which is older than Capitec, slightly younger than FNB, but African Bank has at some point closed down, delisted, everybody was fired. And if you look at the past 2 years, it's coming back strongly, and it's reimagined itself. So every business go through a cycle, whether you're on top or at the bottom. It's very important that even your own industry, just because at the moment it seems like you are being attacked, you're being beaten up by competition, do not lose who you are. I've never seen FNB stepping away from who they are just because Capitec is taken over. When African Bank was outside the periphery, when at some point we even forgot who African Bank is, but now they're coming back and they're just looking for the market share. So I think with those pictures, it's very important. You're not always going to be on top, but it's very important to remain who you are and obviously reimagine yourself. And sometimes if you are the problem CEO, fire yourself. And I think you've got those two insurance brands there, which are, I think, the biggest insurance companies in South Africa. Old Mutual is the most popular one, oldest. But if I look at it, I'm not going to ask you a poll, but if I had to ask a poll in this room, in the Black community, Old Mutual is known more than Sanlam, but Sanlam in South Africa is bigger than Old Mutual. So it's a question of, is it a market issue or is it how you play? Now, I know Old Mutual is now launching a bank which is going to compete with Capitec. Sanlam was asked, are you going to open a bank? They said, no, they are not playing in the bank space. Now, you always need to know who you are, your market is. Don't do what other people are doing. Just because Capitec is now opening an insurance company, Old Mutual says we're going to compete. Sanlam says, no, we're going to stick to our lane. We're not going to open a bank like Old Mutual and compete with Capitec. What's funny, Capitec was actually running its insurance business through Sanlam in a partnership. And Capitec has said, no, we now got our own license, Sanlam Bar. Because the businesses partnership, sometimes instead of competing, you need to partner. But a moment where you need to stop competing and stop partnering and compete. Business do that well, but I find that in our own space, we are very reluctant to do that. If you look at this, companies below, which are your partnerships there, and now let me move this thing because I can't see. Some of you might not know these brands. These brands, Simply, Different Life, and All Life. Sorry, on the previous slides, yes, Simply, Different Life, and All Life. Some of you might not know these brands, but these brands here, I've known because I've worked close with them. All of them plays in insurance space. They've got this brand that are putting out to the market. They are selling insurance all of us, but none of them are insurance companies. They are leveraging on the insurance licenses of the other big players like Old Mutual and all of that. They are run by actuaries. So the professionals who actually says, okay, how do I take my profession and make it a business and entrepreneur? They build these businesses, but instead of going out and compete with Old Mutual, they partner. So it's very important that you find partnership where you do not have to be the big player. You do not have to be the most famous person, but as long as it fits to who you are and it fits to what you are trying to do. I think sometimes we fail to do that, especially as Black people, when we're actually building our businesses. I think the next slide. I think this one important. I remember in one of our ESCOs, we actually were talking about, probably, 3 or 4 years ago, Nando started to scale down and close down certain restaurants or take our outlets, and Petros coming up. Was Nando's failing? Is Petros taking over? We do not know. But one thing we know, Nando's is very clear on its market, redefined its market. They are not for everyone. They are not everywhere. They are clearly going for high end. Petros is everywhere, is closing the gap. They are competing, yes, the toe to toe, but the two businesses coexist. Then you've got Hungry Lion on the other side, so which I think, I'm sure some of you probably know, Hungry Lion is owned by Shoprite. So now if you're going to set up a business today that's going to compete with Hungry Lion, but if that business backed up by a big company like Shoprite, you're not going to win. So you always need to know who you are when the competition is. So Hungry Lion, I was actually speaking to a lady about 3 weeks ago who's a 10th generation KFC owner. So she grew up in KFC, man. She was actually saying, Mthokozisi, the way it's so bad now, the economy, the way it is, people that have money, that can afford KFC, they are no longer buying KFC because they want to eat healthy. The people that are buying KFC because for them it's luxury do not have money to buy KFC. So now, how does that person survive? So now it's always a balance act. She's now saying, we now need to open more KFCs in high-end areas, but you don't have money because our shops, they are family shops, they are more in your taxi ranks and things like that. So you always need to know where you are. And that thing does not always happen in big spaces only. Now, Beryl Services, where I am, Afpop, everyone knows who Afpop is. It's been around for more than 100 years. Two Mountains, probably no one knows who Mountains is in this room, but Two Mountains is owned by Old Mutual. So what does it look like? And then you've got Barok and Sopem. I work for Tabule too. So it's very important to say who's our competitor. Is our competitor Afpop? Or who's national player? Is our competitor Two Mountains? who's owned by Old Mutual, or Zakomta, a regional player, Baroka is a Pretoria company, and Tsopema is a Soweto company. So you need to know who, when the way we, at Soweto, you are comparing both Afop and Tsopema. In Pretoria, both Afop and Baroka. So you always need to know your market is and choose your market. Otherwise, you're going to try to be everything to everyone. It's not going to work. And that works in every business. I think the next slide, ready to go. Well, so now, if you are building a business, a building institution, which I think a business should be, what do you do? Firstly, I'm submitting to you, you must have well-defined vision and mission statement. Who you are and who you're not. And that doesn't have to be in a big 20, and do it yourself in a way that you understand it. You need to understand why you're doing it. Why is your business surviving? And why are you doing that to survive? Is it your business there to pay for your, what do you call it? For your needs? That's the only thing it's there, it's fine. Is your business to solve a problem? It's fine. So you need to know, because that's going to define your appetite and things like that. And you need to be clear what is required to be done. Your market research, and it doesn't mean you have to employ people. Do your search, be intentional about it, and also be clear on the development plan, your business plan, how you're going to grow, and how you survive that business. Because if you're not in the room, they try to sell to the next person. You must have qualified, competent people. Even if you hire your cousin must be competent. If your cousin is, don't hire your worst cousin that can be employed for anyone. And if you employ them, train them well, and discipline them, and they'll be fine. And have effective partnership. Supply, do not think you'll survive on your own. But obviously, do not have partners that are going to take value from you without adding value, balance it out. And also have consistent monitoring and evaluation performance. Every week, every month. I think one thing that business people do badly, especially entrepreneurs, they don't have a monthly meeting with themselves to say, how did you do last month? We set up a target of X, or we didn't set up a target, but how do you do? Because the only way you can see whether you are improving or not, and most people just count revenue, but revenue, cost, and everything else around. And think and plan beyond self. You no longer, at some point, you're not going to be able to wake up and work, but your business should continue to do what it does in order to afford the lifestyle that it gives your business, to your family. So therefore, how do you prepare for that? And unfortunately, if you are a one-man show or one-person show, you need to do this yourself every day. And even if you are no longer a one-person show, you've got a team that works for you, you still need to do this. So the team needs to do this. You need to hold them accountable to do that. Because if you don't do that, you're definitely going to be static at some point. The next slide. So I just want to, this is my last slide around the research and case study. I'm taking an example of what we did. So when one of my companies I used to work for, we are looking at better society. I'm sure most of us knows what we call stokvels and better societies. When we look at, firstly, we need to define this segment. You don't have to define it in PowerPoints, but define it. So what is the segment that you're looking at? So this is how we define ourselves. Effectively, better society are part of affinity groups. Then we have to say, write it down, what is this affinity group? It's going to be a safe space where everyone in the group shares a particular identity. Because we know stokvels are a family group, family stokvel, work stokvel. You need to define it yourself. You don't have to hire a consultant, but you be clear in your head, what segment are you targeting and define? Because if you do not have that, write it down, you're going to miss a segment. And you're going to try to be all over to everyone at any time. The next one, next slide. So then you need to understand what drives that segment. So I think what we're trying to do here, we're saying, okay, in a better society space, which is the market we're looking at, people are working in a group and saying one thing that makes them belong into the group, they want to improve their financial management and discipline. Some people are part of better societies because they don't have self-management discipline to manage their money. So they want to grow into a group, and the group forces them to do that. It also fosters a sense of belonging and social support. For better societies or for investment, whatever the case might be, they meet every month or they meet once in 2 months, whatever the case might be. But because of that, they belong together. So therefore, what the groups are looking at, it serves multiple purposes. And at the same time, it actually provides nest. If I lose my loved one, I'm not by myself, I've got people who work with me. And then we use the fact that we're a group to go and negotiate power and everything. So we actually, what is it that makes the society work? And around. And next slide, we need to define it ourselves. And the next slide. So then we come up with a market. So now it then says, based on the research that we had and based on the data that we had, we then group them. So there's better societies, there's grocery stokvels, there's cash stokvels, there's savings stokvels, and the other. And then we broke them down to how many people actually belong to this. One thing I can tell you about such research, whatever you do, it's never 100% correct. Whether you do it yourself or you do whatever you do, never ever think the picture you get is going to be 100% correct. I'm sure if you had to take this done from Sanlam, from Old Mutual, from Absa, from everywhere else, the numbers are going to be different. But there are certain truths that are going to be the same. What customers like, what you think customers like are probably going to be the same. But if you think your market research must be perfect, the way you do it, and it must give you the exact numbers, you are mistaken. But you do need to get to a point where you define the market. Once you've done that, you are then saying, this is what I'm gunning for. This is the market share I'm gunning for. This is what I'm going to get it. And it's therefore, it manages your resources. So you always need to get that picture. It doesn't matter how you code it. And you also define what's your next opportunity. What we're doing here, we're saying, we had a product for better societies. We realized, shucks, there are different societies out there. There are different groups out there. We then said, you know what, we're not going to be worried about everything else. We're just going to worry about better societies, or we're going to worry about everything else. So we needed to be clear and we need to define our market. The next slide. Okay. Then in between that, obviously, then says, in a piece of paper again, what does F&B give to the societies? We write it down. They give them an app. While they give it an app, they can get a funeral cover to a Stockford group plans. Every progress can have access to the balances. So that then you get, what does NetBank do? So once you write down what a competitor does, you then can be able to say, okay, what is it I'm going to offer? Because you know what does your competitor do. So these two are like for like competitors, FNB and NetBank, and what they offer to society in order to add value. And you look at your product and you look at what you are missing. The next slide. Okay, this one then is GST increment. So now what is important then is that when you do this, do not always look at your tradition or your obvious competitors. There are always people out there who are not obvious competitors, but who are also competing with you. I mean, you look at DSTV, I mean, I know they've been struggling a lot. They try to have DST communities. Unilever have got its own product. So once you've got your core competitors, you must have people who are mirroring what you do for an alternative. Because once you get all of that view, then, okay, what's my value proposition? What am I offering? What is my price? And all of that. And so that when people say to you, you are more expensive than so and so, or you are not doing so and so, you always have because you know who they are referring to and their approach, you either have a response that you give to them, if it's safe to do so, or you have a response that you won't give to them, but you understand, so you're not heartbroken about it. That is always very, very important. So you've got your traditional competitors and you've got people who are not traditional competitors, but who also compete with you knowing or unknowingly. And I think, we did that when we were looking at what those people offer about. The next slide. So then another one is customer insight. And customer insights needs to give you high level. What's a product? We said, you know what is important is around the product. The product must be dynamic, it must be flexible, and it must allow customers to mature from simple group cover to some product alive. So there's a product there. Then after the product, you are selling amagwinya. What's an added value to amagwinya? Now I'm selling amagwinya and anopolon. That's an added value. So you always need to have that. How are you distributing it? And how are you servicing your customer? So once you've got those things, and then you've got a business, you've got a business model that works. Because it's very important who targeting with the segment part, what drives those people. Once you've defined those people, what drives them? And thirdly, what are your competitors doing? Then you then know how you compete. Then you define that, your product, how you're distributing your product, how value are you adding to your product, and what servicing are you doing to your product around that, and then how you're going to leverage that. I think for me, that's just a nutshell what your customer research insight looks like. And I think sometimes we complicate things by saying you can actually get this information when you talk to people, I mean, at a rank or at a church, or wherever you meet with people, you ask questions and you make a mental note, to put a note. We are billing. You don't have to hire consultants to do it if you can't afford it. But if you can afford it, by all means, do it. But it's very important that you get that view, because without always that view, you are shooting blank and you are shooting blindly, and it doesn't matter if it's small or big. The model and the approach is almost the same. The next slide, Mabongi. And then I think we will wrap up. Then I think that after, this is just an example of what I call a strategy on a page. I know sometimes when you hire a big consultant, people who've got who thinks they're clever and just complicate life, you just want to do your business. This is just my project again. One pager. What are you doing? It's your aim. What's your business growth? which are strategy themes? What are your processes that you want to improve? What are your key objectives for this year or for the next period, whatever period you're measuring? How are you managing your risk? How are you creating a high-performance culture? And what are you doing to it? I think it's in one page. You can have 8222, 111, whatever number you've got. Once you've got those things defined, that becomes your North Star. It becomes your roadmap. And everything that you do or don't do, you always measure it against that. Then obviously you can always translate to a balance scorecard if you want. But I think here's an example of saying you do not have to open a big MBA book. You do not have to hire people to do it. You can simplify it yourself in the language you understand and it speaks to you. Because if you do not measure who you are and do not measure how you grow, you always have a problem. I always say to people, the reason why Capitec, over and above the fact that, you cannot get a license in South Africa unless you're a public listed company. But the reason why Capitec has managed to do what it does is because from day one, they were an institution. They manage themselves as an institution. Therefore, they're always clear. How are we measuring against our targets? What are you doing? And sometimes we lack that in our entrepreneurial space. We do not do that to ourselves. We are scared to make ourselves to account. We are scared to put our goals out there. We think it's too complex. You can actually simplify this thing. You can use this. You can use a balance scorecard. But for me, it's simpler. And in that way, you get the view and others. And the view gives you a holistic of how your business is happening around it. I think this is the next slide is my last slide. Can you just confirm that? And thereafter, we can just, yes. Then I say, it's in summary, it doesn't matter where you are. You can always start now. So if you've missed any step or you didn't get anything right or you tried it, didn't work out, it's okay. You can always start now. You don't have to, the fact that you didn't get it 2 years ago or last week, that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean you don't get it right. So as a summary, before I take it, I open up for you, back to you, Mabongi. Firstly, always understand who you are as an entrepreneur. Be clear that every business goes through a life cycle, whether it's your business, someone else goes through life cycles, and be clear that the worries of a business, whether it's a one-man business, or it's a business multinational, whatever, multi-boundaries, it's worries about the same thing. When you are going to run a business, be always clear what does it take there to make it a business institution, avoid those errors, and you always correct them. And the customer insight and the way of getting your customers is the same. Know who your customer is, define them, know what they are liking and what drives them, and know what their competition is giving it to them, and then choose how big the competition is and what you're going to offer it to them, and then work around it. And thereafter, I'm sure you can then build a sustainable business that you can move from one generation to the next generation. And I think I said something earlier on, which I didn't finish, which I said, I'm a student of business sustainability, purely because my father started so many businesses. By the time he passed away, none of his business existed, even though those businesses started still exist today. So I know that the fact that business closes down does not mean the market has changed. Sometimes it just means the person that manages it differently. That is why you've got likes of Pick n Pay closing shops and the likes of ShopRite opening shops every day. So you also need to know whether you're a professional, or individual, or wherever you are in a space. The business has a life of its own. It's always going to survive. It's going to outlast you. But how you behave and manage it depends. It's going to have an influence of what you're going to do to the next one. On that note, Mabongi, I'll pause there. Then I'll give it back to you. Thank you very much.
It's the drop the mic moment. That was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. You know, the slide I got stuck in, those steps. There's a masterclass that I offer graduates on how to start a business. And each time there's always that nagging thing of wanting to register the business and start running. But then I've realized after many attempts of starting businesses, I've learned that you need to do the background work of what you actually want to do and not rush if it's not necessary for you to do that. You spoke about developing your concept and understanding your market and understanding the market share that you tap into. And I think some of us are stuck right there when it comes to unlocking that market, defining who is our client, how do we get to our client, and what is it that we add over and above what our competitors are already are offering. So thank you so much. I've learned a lot on my side as I'm not calling myself a small business. I'm calling myself a self-employed for now, but obviously in a very progressive step-by-step. Community, let me open the floor for your questions. I'm not seeing any comments on the chat. Can I see the hands? You can always just raise your hand if you've got any questions. I've got a couple of questions for Mr. Bhengu if you guys are not talking. So please be quick to raise your hand or jot a comment on the chat.
Yeah, I think while maybe people are asking their questions, can I just comment on your last comment and also that slide?
Yeah.
There's always a debate, and that debate is always going to be there around preparation vis-a-vis starting. That you cannot start because things are perfect. So we need to always understand that there's a difference between a business and a person who runs a business, and we don't always have to be in the same space. So the business itself is an idea, but an entrepreneur may not be in an ideal stage as an entrepreneur. So that balancing act and says who you are, where the business at, writes it down and all of that. There's a debate that says the business plan is not a perfect business and it sometimes fails and most of the time fails, which is correct, until God then do it because it's when all of the lands. But if you do not have anything written down, you have nothing to start off with. That's number one. Now, if you are both a starter entrepreneur, at the same time, you're also starting a new business. You need to balance. You need to do both. But the fact that the business failed doesn't mean you fail as an entrepreneur. And you may be an established business person, an entrepreneur, but start up a business that fails. And that's also happened because the concept was wrong. I think I'm trying to think. There are lots of businesses actually fail, not because the person is bad, but the business model is that failed. So we need to separate ourselves. So it's very important whether you are still self-employed, you are busy developing yourself as an entrepreneur, while you are busy building a business, and build the building blocks for each and everyone and separate the two because it's not the same thing.
Okay, can I bring in my question since I'm not seeing any hands? Okay, all right, Nati, can I take your question? So the first question here on the chat, does one's personality of being timid or very considerate but eager to be an entrepreneur determine if you will be a good entrepreneur, or would one be able to move from self-employed to serial entrepreneur? Hey.
So you're saying, please repeat the question. You're saying, does the personality have
does it determine how a person moves from being self-employed to being a serial entrepreneur? Just a personality that is perhaps timid, but there is a desire, there is eagerness there to be an entrepreneur, but you're very timid.
From my personal experience, both in leadership as well as in business generally, personality does contribute to how well one does, especially in the starting phase, but it does not necessarily say that is how it measures how well a person is going to be successful in the long run. So in the business, you learn and grow by experience. What I mean by that, I mean, as someone who's timid, for example, is you are scared to tell a customer no. You are scared to fire your employee. You are scared to tell a supplier, I'm not going to buy from you because you're expensive for my margins. Those things in a business, if you continue with them and you don't step out of them, they will eat you alive because your staff will steal from you, they'll get away with stuff, and your suppliers are going to take advantage of you. But with your timid personality, if you go out there and tell yourself, in order for this business to work, you need to do this, you're just going to have to do it. And the more you do it, you get better. I think it's very important to say the business got a life of its own, it's got a character of its own. I, as a leader, I need to balance the two. Because sometimes you can be too generous. you give everyone a discount, you give everyone a free B, it's not going to make money. So in my sense, your personality doesn't determine whether you're successful or not. But if you don't unlearn and relearn, your personality can be a downfall. That's what I can say.
And I'm learning as well to not discard the things that seem like a negative element in your personality. You might think that being timid is a negative, and perhaps it is in most parts, but there will be a time where your timidity will help you. So
Definitely.
sometimes we discard things that were not favorable in some instances, in other seasons. But if we acknowledge them and package them well, they actually become handy in the future. So perhaps in this instance, if someone wants to scale and progress, timidity might not work. But sometimes when you are dealing with making decisions haphazardly, timidity would actually come in handy, because then you'll do your homework well. You'll make sure that you think things through because you are timid. So it's just an example that I'm thinking of. So Linda saying, thank you for a very enlightening presentation. Then he says, Capitec is a white-owned, so is Sanlam, Old Moshel, 4 major banks. What will it take to create a financial institution that is owned and managed by Blacks? Oh my God, Linda, I wish one of the guests that we couldn't secure, Mthokozisi, was someone who has started banks in Zim several times, not once, did the mergers of certain banks as well. And we were trying to bring him on board for that particular reason, Linda. So what is your take in this question?
I think for me, whether it's at banks or whether it's in banks or in any industry, I think banks is one. It's an outlier because it's heavily regulated. I mean, if you look at Old Mutual, I was reading, I think a couple of weeks ago, I think Old Mutual, they're only going to open their bank in March 2025, they say. They've, in their planning, they've already spent 500 million by now. By next year, June, they'll spend 1.5 billion before they open first doors in the bank. So now you ask me how many Black people have that kind of money. I think that's one problem. So South Africa, generally, it's just capital and regulation. That's one issue. But Blacks in general, one of the things we have not taken over in this is because we don't play well together. I think for me, that's my personal view. If we partner well together, we don't want to outshine each other, and we don't want to be the big, because if you own a company like a bank, no one cares who's a big shareholder or not. We own a pie. So it's always that debate. We as Blacks, we rather own 100% of 100,000 rather own 1% of 1 billion. So I rather own 100% of 100,000 than 1% of 1 billion. That's a problem that we as Blacks generally need to get through. Which I think for me, it's a second biggest hurdle for banks, but not only for banks, for anything that Blacks want to do together. We don't play well together because we want to outshine each other.
You are the second guest that has said the same thing. Mr. Mbata said the same thing. He said, we don't have to love each other to work together.
No, we
just
don't.
have to be,
And I think I said,
trust each other
sure.
and just, and work. Wow, sure. Okay, Zenzile says, thank you, Mr. Bhengu, for a simplified presentation regarding starting a business and pointing out the mistakes that businesses make. This has put me at ease as I just started my insurance breakage. Yes, I did tell you that you will enjoy the session. Okay, Unati says again, does one's personality of being timid, oh, okay, sorry. Someone was, okay. Oh, Nat was saying, thank you so much. It is possible to get a copy of the presentation. Yes, Nati, it gets shared on the group. So you'll have a recording in the community in the morning. Then Senzo says, thank you, Mr. Bhengu, for the best presentation. And then Linda says, what are 5 top economic sectors that investment ready for Blacks to start businesses around? Yeah, push a Black agenda, Linda, there. Do you have any response to that question? Just 5 sectors. We know from our first session was all sectors are lucrative. It just depends who's running the business and how they're running it. So if you had to choose a top 5 of economic sectors that are just, you know.
Is Glenda asking the question as individual investor, or if Black were to move as a community and a group, or it's just any person who, if you want to do something on your own, what scale of
Linda,
what
do
is
you
it?
want to add on that question? Is this for someone who's entering in the business as a person or as a group?
Okay, thank you. Possibly as an individual, which as I'm trying to find out, is property the best place to go to? Is retail the best place to go to? Yeah. So which ones that maybe in research or trends shows that these are risky, whether we are individual or as a group to go into, and which ones are are more receptive to entry level startups, so to speak. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks. Look, firstly, I'm not an investor advisor. So whatever I say here, Linda, don't use it against me and sue me if you lose money out of it. But if you were to ask me, and I think Jeff Bezos said this, firstly, in any business, the best investment are things that are not going to change. For you to ask me which industries or sectors are likely not to change in the very near future, are going to remain the same. IT, look, I know everyone is an IT specialist, but IT is still going to boom, still going to remain. I think it's going to get worse and worse with robotics and everything else. So if you do investment right there, you're not going to get wrong. I think that's number one. Secondly, is food. I mean, we walked out as Black people from the spaza shop because we're making 2 rands, but the Somalians are making money out of it. Yes, there might be issues around how they work around it, but food, there's always going to be food. I think people are eventually going to get tired of taking taxis to go to buy food in the township. The malls that are coming to townships are going to run out at some point. So the nearest spaza shops are going to steal the next thing. So therefore, retail basic necessities are still going to be there. It's just how you play it. I think generally around food, whatever the food looks like. I think for me, that's the second one. And the last one is the one that I'm in, actually is death. I think people are going to die and they're going to be buried. You're not going to get wrong. That's why everyone tries it. It's just how you do it and do well. And fourthly is how you help people to manage their money. Whether you give them tools to manage their money better or to give them better returns, because people are lazy or people don't have time to manage their own money, but people want to have a lot of money. That is why I'm up annoying a pay. I mean, you've got triple M and move from one space to another. People want quick money. So I think for me, those are the big 5, 4 rather, that are always going to be there. It doesn't matter what they're always going to. The next, probably 5th one I'll add there is water. I think we are definitely reach a stage whereby water is not, there's a lot of money to be made in water. It's just how you do it. I think water is, in South Africa, we say water is a basic right, but no, water is now going to be a big business. I think that's me out of just my thinking there.
You are touching on things that I actually never thought of, like water. But definitely the issue of food, the issue of IT. Last week we did AI. There's just, the world is moving fast, yet that industry really does look sustainable at this point. Yeah. Let me read Ucelu Musa. He says, thank you, Mr. Bhengu. The current environment is characterized by a high level of access to information, which requires high level of competitiveness for small businesses. What strategies would you recommend to aspiring entrepreneurs, especially those that want to play an intermediate role to create sustainable businesses. So these are people that I want to come into a chair. What do they call this? Like middle businesses. For instance, if you come in perhaps as a retail, or you come in as you don't necessarily perhaps produce, or you don't necessarily, I don't know, distribute, but you are.
Okay, the way I understand the question, and you tell me if I'm wrong.
I might be wrong as well, so answer it the way you understand it.
Is with so much information that makes everyone want to compete and I think they know better. How do you compete in a space where you intermediate, which means like you are connecting the product to a person or people to a product? Is that a question? I understand it. There's someone is brokering services or whatever the case may be. This is how I understand that. I think firstly, if we are in a what I call brokerage space or what I call integrated space, I mean, I know brokerage is fundamentally understood to be financial services, but everyone is a broker of something. Even these days, I mean, in the internet, is say firstly you need to understand that you've got two kind of suppliers that you've got. You've got big major suppliers. They don't have time. I mean, if you look at your Unilevers, your big banks and everybody else, they've got the product, but they don't understand the market. And you've got people who are closer to the market, which are small businesses, but they don't understand, they don't have the muscle and the money to actually distribute. So you need to play for both. You've got two suppliers. One is an IT guy who just built something in the garage, doesn't have to talk to the market. They can't afford to pay you. And you've got someone who's big, you've got something else, but they don't understand the market. So you need to have that. I think if you're a broker, a distributor, you're always going to make money. Just need to understand who's your supplier. And secondly, the market is so diverse in such a way that you have people who like convenience, and you have people who like price, and you've got people who just would like to be associated brand. So if you're a distributor, once you know who you're distributing for and who you're distributing to, you're always going to have a market. If your distribution is for convenience, that's what you do. And therefore you go and take the product, speak to that. The danger though in the distribution space is when you are trying to be everything to everybody. Where you are trying to, today you are distributing it to a spaza shop, you are distributing Pampers, for example, and tomorrow you are distributing Pampers to Woolworths. It just becomes messy. I mean, I was talking to someone yesterday, the person does research in a Pampers space. One thing they are saying, because people don't have money these days, they are trying to research how do they get Pampers in the spazas in the township cheaply, but closer to so that if you want, you don't have to take a taxi to Shoprite. So there's always going to play your space. And because I know that people that are marketing agencies, they don't want to deal with someone who's everything to everyone. So choose your market, choose your supplier, and know your margins. You're always going to get R2 of something or 2% of something rather than get nothing. And my view is that if you're a seller, you should never, ever be without money. Your markets may change, but you're always going to make some money at some point.
Sure, thank you so much. I've asked for just another 10 minutes, which is we have 5 minutes remaining on that 10. The last two comments, please don't add any more. Sfiso says, in developing systems, how do you make sure that you hire the best candidate while the resources such as finance are not enough for you to have a good skilled candidate since the business is still on early stages? I love this question, Sfiso. And then the last comment is, this is a powerful statement, definitely great insight. That's from Amanda.
The last one. Look, I think firstly, there's always this view that because you are big or you have abundant access to resources of talent. That's not true. So everybody fights for talent, whether you've got money or not. But if you've got money, you fight better because you've got money. I think that's number one. So if you don't have money and you did a service, I think for me, there are three things you do. Number one, you steal the best people You promise them the world and you give them the world, and the world does not have to cost money. There are people who are driven not by money. They are driven by relevance, learning, and ego. You need to understand those people. Depending on each industry you're in, obviously, especially in the skills industry, you can hire the best and pay them very badly, but if you treat them well and you're promising them a world which you can give it to them, that money, you'll be fine. That's number two. If you end up compromising in a way that you can't attract the best thinking and best capable, and you can't afford that as well, you are going for C-grade employees. Train them well. You can never overtrain, just like you can never over-prepare, train them. Even if it means every day you train them on the basic things. You know this person is not clever enough. You know this person is not capable enough. Retrain and retrain. So make it intentional that you are retraining them so that they reduce the mistakes they make. I think that's number one. Two, hold them to account for their mistakes. Holding to account does not necessarily mean firing them all the time, but always have a coaching conversations. What does it mean? Discipline, all of that. Because the biggest problem is when you have cheap labor, okay, you are not paying enough. People think you are robbing them. They are robbing you with what they output, also because they are not trained well. You don't want all that concoction there. You rather have someone who's saying, you know what, Chief, I've trained you. You are bad, I'm releasing you. Then if someone who said, I didn't train you, you are bad, and you also think I'm bad to you because I'm underpaying you, and it becomes, no one wins. And end up stealing from each other and all of that. So you need to balance. I'll say, if you don't have money, train well. If you don't have money and you can't train, hire the best, promise them the world. Tell them then you're going to buy them a panoi.
Sure, that's a lovely response. That brings us to our closing comments. Do you want to just give us one line to close, or you good to go?
From me?
Yes.
Oh, I think let's have a great evening and let's continue unlearning and relearning.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you so much. I will now stop the recording.